Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 490 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, not really asked to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. You know what I always wondered? Have you ever seen that those shows about the people that are extremely cheap? Like, I'm not going to call them cheapskate. I don't know if that's offensive to those people or not, but They live their life trying to spend the least amount of money possible. I remember one clip that was going around in one episode where a guy would walk almost a mile just to fill water bottle jugs at the local park because he didn't want to spend money on his water bill. When I watched that, I always wondered to myself, how would life be? Or how would their viewpoint of life change if they weren't as cheap as they were? I think that there is a difference between someone that is cheap compared to someone that likes to save money. I think that there's a healthy balance between the two. There's a difference, but there could be a healthy balance. You don't have to be cheap if you want to save money. In the same breath, I don't think there's ever been a team in sports that found success being cheap. I'm not saying there hasn't been a team that hasn't found success saving money and being smart with how they do things. I think that's the way to win. Being smart with your payroll, being smart with your team, obviously getting the best players, but understanding when to pay people, how to pay people, and how to navigate the salary cap. Obviously, when we're talking about football and basketball. But one thing that I don't think in my entire lifetime I have ever seen is a team win at the highest level being cheap. That's one of the reasons why I'm constantly talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm constantly saying that they are a poverty franchise, not because their history, which obviously spells poverty since they haven't really won anything, even though they've had some good players. Not because they have, generational talents right now in Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and currently T. Higgins. I call them a poverty franchise because they just continue to do things to perpetuate the narrative that is set around them, which is they are a cheap franchise. I understand how expensive Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson would be if you paid all of them. However, if you would have been smarter and paid them before their deals would have been up, you may not be in the situation that you're in now. The reason why I started this episode with that is because Trey Hendrickson, who was one of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive player last year. I know he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year, but one of the best defensive players, led the league in sacks and also had contract disputes with the Cincinnati Bengals organization before the season, was granted permission to seek a trade. More than likely, Trey Hendrickson is out when we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. The same Bengals that's also still struggling with how are they going to pay Jamar Chase and how are they going to pay T. Higgins. I know they franchise tag T. Higgins, but a lot of people are thinking that T. Higgins is not trying to play on a franchise tag again, seeing as though we did that last year. So they're probably going to franchise tag and trade him because they're still trying to figure out how to work out a deal with Jamar Chase, who, again, they just keep messing themselves up. If you would have paid, I know that this sounds harsh, and this sounds rough, but it is. It's the business. If you would have paid Jamar Chase before last year, before the record-breaking year that he had, he probably would cost less. But again, you're in the situation now that you're in because you don't understand how to be smart with your money. Again, the title, the thing that is talked about the most when we talk about the Cincinnati Bengals is they're a cheap organization. And you can go down the history of sports, not just football, not just basketball, any sport. What team do you know has a reputation of being cheap to their players and also has won at the highest level? Or has won multiple times at the highest level? It doesn't happen. Which is why I have little faith, and I mean absolutely no faith, that the Bengals, even with Joe Burrow, even with Jamar Chase, even if they find a way to get T. Higgins, I have no faith that they're going to be a Super Bowl caliber team. Yes, they have those players, but there's a reason why all of those players, Hendrickson, Chase, and Burrow, had historic years last year. And they still didn't even make the playoffs. I've talked about that ad nauseum on this podcast. Let's not get it twisted here. Trey Hendrickson is a great player. Whatever team he ends up with will be much better than they were before they had Trey Hendrickson. He's not on the same level right now as, let's say, a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt, but I think that he is just a step below. And that's saying something. He led the league in sacks last year. He's great. And it looks like Sam Hubbard, who was the other star defensive player that the Cincinnati Bengals had, he retired at 29, I believe. So shouts out to him for walking away, being able to walk away from the game when he wants to. It goes back to what I've said time and time again about that quote-unquote championship window. You need to capitalize it when you can, because it doesn't always stay open. I know the famous line from Joe Burrow is, the championship window is however long my career is. Well, as we're seeing, Joe Burrow had the best season of his career last year and didn't even touch the playoffs. And now, as we speak, Trey Hendrickson is more likely gone from the Cincinnati Bengals, who is their best defensive player. The same defense that struggled mightily last year. He was the only bright spot on the defense. Remember, they had Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates wanted to stay, but they couldn't afford him. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Whoa. I'm sorry. It's not that they could afford him. They just didn't want to pay him what he felt he was worth. You want to know another cheap franchise, another cheap organization as of recently? The Giants. Again, they could have paid Saquon Barkley what the Eagles paid him. They just didn't want to. If you watch Hard Knocks, you see the famous line that they said, we couldn't sleep at night knowing that we're paying a running back as much as he's asking for. Which, might I add, he was asking for less than what he received from Philly. He was asking for less because he wanted to stay with the Giants organization. And we're talking about a cheap organization. Look what the Giants are now compared to where Saquon Barkley and the Eagles are. A team that is smart with their money. What's unfortunate about this whole situation with Trey Hendrickson is he's stated at every single turn, kind of like Saquon did with the Giants, He wants to remain a Cincinnati Bengal. But gone are the days where people will continuously take pay cut after pay cut after pay. You know what it is? The model, the pay cut model, the person that's always the poster child for the pay cut is Tom Brady. Every time somebody wants to throw out, you should take a pay cut, they always turn to Tom Brady. They said, look at Tom Brady. He took a pay cut, and it benefited the New England Patriots handsomely. You know, he has 7 rings, 6 with the Patriots. That's what happens if you take a pay cut. That is some BS. It really wasn't until later in his, or probably halfway to later in his career, where he started taking pay cuts. And on top of that, Tom Brady is able to take pay cuts because he's winning Super Bowls and getting to Super Bowls. Remember, there was a 10 to 12 year span, I believe, that the Patriots didn't win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Well, you think he was taking pay cuts then? No. So when you think that players are going to take pay, there has to be a favorable reward. We have to understand, why am I taking this pay cut? Yeah, Tom Brady can take a pay cut. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. He has rings that's attributed to these pay cuts. When you look at someone like Trey Hendrickson, no offense to him, but he doesn't have anything to fall back on as to why I should trust an organization. If I take a pay cut, how am I going to trust that the organization is going to use that money in building a Super Bowl caliber team? I know we went 4 years ago, but what have we done since then? That's why I understand the whole restructure thing. I get that. That's why I never think that you should take a pay cut. I understand if, people are getting laid off and the only way to keep people's job is if you take a pay cut. I think Stephen A. Smith did that. And I understand that, if you want to keep some of the people that you work with employed, and the only way to do that is take a pay cut, I get it. And for that, I say I understand, and I would obviously consider taking a pay cut if that was the case. But for someone like Trey Hendrickson, who's on a much different scale than me, a much different scale than Stephen A. Smith, even though I don't know anymore. Shouts out to Stephen A. Smith. I think it sounded like a $100 million deal. But I don't see how you don't have the equity built up in the trust stock of these players to think that they're going to take a pay cut because they think they trust you enough to build a franchise. No, hell no. Hell no. What do I look like? What do I look like being on the Arizona Cardinals and you asking me to take a pay cut because we need to build a roster? You've had all this time building a roster. What do you think me taking a pay cut is going to do? What? You can restructure some things, but take a pay cut? Especially if you're Trey Hendrickson and you just had the best season of your career. Same as Jamar Chase. I don't expect Jamar Chase to take a pay cut, which is why the deal probably isn't done yet. He just had the best season of his career. And you think now is the time to ask me to take a pay cut after what I just displayed on the field? Come on now. Come on. I pray for every player to get what they feel they're deserved. And again, there's a difference between being smart with your money and not always recklessly spending, and being cheap, or lack of a better term, a cheapskate. And as unfortunate as it is, the Cincinnati Bengals organization has the reputation of being cheap. And there's also no coincidence that that's the same organization that hasn't won anything in their tenure. I wish the best for Trey Hendrickson. I hope that he finds a team that values him just as much as he values himself. Speaking of value, something is going on right now in Seattle. In a span of a couple hours, actually, you saw Tyler Lockett get released from Seattle, and DK Metcalf, who is their star wide receiver, requests a trade. I guess they're going in a new direction. I don't know. I know that cutting Tyler Lockett was smart financially for the team, and we've known that DK Metcalf has had issues with the team as of recently. I don't know him personally. I don't know what stems from these issues, but he has not been the happiest when we talk about the Seattle Seahawks. So the fact that a official trade request has come down, I'm actually more shocked at the fact that it hasn't happened sooner. But here we are. And kind of like Devontae Adams, I wanted to give my top 5 landing spots for DK. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, how is Devontae Adams' landing spots different from DK? I'm going to tell you. I think that they're both in two different places in their careers. I don't think Devontae Adams, even at his best, as far as right now, when we talk about his peak, that's much different. But right now, I don't think Devontae Adams is at the level of a consistent number one receiver anymore. Just due to age, due to, wear and tear on the body, I just don't think he can do that anymore. Again, we're not talking about peaks. We're not talking about primes. We're talking about right now. DK is different. DK is young, and he can be a number one receiver. Now, I don't know, because he does drop the ball a considerable amount. I don't know if he can be the number one receiver on a championship, like he can be the wide receiver on a championship caliber team. But I do think that he's good enough to, once he comes into the building, he is going to be your number one receiver. And I think that changes a lot when we talk about some of the teams. I know a team that I picked for Devontae Adams was the Cowboys. And while that would be a scary duo with DK Metcalf and CeeDee Lamb, I think that the Cowboys already have a solidified number one. So I don't think DK would fit on the Cowboys, because I don't think that he nor CeeDee Lamb is going to accept and should even accept a number 2 receiver role. I think Devontae Adams is at a point in his career where he can and should accept a number 2 role. So, with all that being said, let me give you the 5 destinations that I think DK Metcalf will be best at. Number 1, or 1 through 5, I guess number 5. I'll start with number 5. Number 5, honestly, these are no particular order. These are just 5 teams I think he can land. So I guess I'll start at number 1. Number 1, I have the Green Bay Packers. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, wait, Jalen, what the hell? You just said he'll be in defective number 1. What about Christian Watson? What about Romeo Doubs? You're absolutely correct. What an astute brain that you have. What I will say, though, is the issue with those players is they constantly get hurt. Like, as unfortunate as it is, Watson and Doubs have an injury history at this point. And you need, as we saw last year, the damn near entire wide receiver room went down during at the end of the year. So if you pair DK Metcalf with a Jordan Love and you also have Josh Jacobs coming out the backfield, I think that would be a great pairing. DK Metcalf, he does not have an history. He's been hurt, but he doesn't have a history of being hurt. And he is a huge wide receiver and a huge target for a Jordan Love who at times struggles with accuracy. DK Metcalf is the comp, even though I don't think, I think when I hear this, in fact, I'm probably not even going to say this because I think it's disrespectful when they say it. He has a large catch radius. and he's just a large individual. So it allows a quarterback who may struggle at times with accuracy a little bit more breathing room because you're passing to such a reliable, when we talk about catch radius, such a reliable target. While yes, I do understand that DK Metcalf does drop the ball from time to time, he is, when he's at his best, he's good enough to be that type of receiver. So I have Green Bay as a great landing spot. Another landing spot I have is the Chargers. Look, right now, we can honestly say that right now the Quentin Johnston experiment has not worked. I'm not saying he's not a decent receiver. I'm not saying that he can't be on the roster. I'm not saying that he hasn't contributed for the Chargers. What I'm saying is you draft him as high as you draft him to be your number one receiver out of TCU. He has not done that. In fact, last year, the number one receiver for the Chargers was Ladd McConkey, who was a rookie. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying a rookie can't be your number one receiver and you not have success. But what I'm saying is that's not what usually happens. On top of that, that wasn't in the game plan for the Chargers when they drafted Quentin Johnston. So I understand that the last game of the season for the Chargers was in the playoffs and Justin Herbert had a horrible game. However, if you look at Ladd McConkey, he had the game of his life. So what I'm saying is you can take some of the responsibility off Ladd McConkey, who again was a rookie last year, and give it to DK Metcalf. That just opens up the offense exponentially. I know they just cut Joey Bosa, so they have room and they have money that they can use elsewhere. So maybe the Chargers could be the landing spot for DK. Once he goes there, he is the definitive number one receiver. You have a great number two in Ladd McConkey. Now Quentin Johnston probably slides to 3. So there's not as much on his shoulders, seeing though he hasn't proven the ability to carry a number one receiver title. So, or 2 at this point. And I think the Chargers would be a great place for him. And it gives Justin Herbert a weapon that he hasn't had. DK Metcalf is a different type of receiver. I saw somebody on Twitter say this. Shouts out to them. I don't remember the name, so I can't give you the proper credit, but they said he's a Temu A.J. Brown, and I completely agree. He's a large physical wide receiver. Just like A.J. Brown. It's just A.J. Brown is better, in my opinion. So if you want a Temu A.J. Brown, that would be great for the Chargers. So I think the Chargers is another great pick. Honestly, another one is the Chicago Bears. You don't know what's going to happen with Keenan Allen. Is he going to stay or is he going to go to somewhere else? I think right now all signs are pointing to him going somewhere else. Yes, you have Cole Kmet. Yes, you still have DJ Moore. Yes, you still have Rome Odunze. At this moment, you can argue if DJ Moore is better, but I would probably lean towards DK Metcalf. So it gives outside of Cole Kmet, it gives Caleb Williams a physical receiver that they have not had. Remember, the pairing of Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams was delayed because Keenan Allen was hurt. So I don't think, mind you, if he goes to a Green Bay, if he goes to a Chargers, if he goes to a Chicago, I don't know if that makes them a Super Bowl caliber team. But I do think that I do think that makes them much better than they would be if they didn't trade him or trade for him. So I know Chicago, they have a lot going. They have a new coach. They're still trying. They have a really good defense. They're still trying to figure everything out offensively because they have a bunch of free agents, one being Keenan Allen. I think that DK Metcalf would be great for them. And I don't know if DK Metcalf want to go here, because if you request a trade, and I know that, reports are coming out that he wants to play for a contender. So I don't know if this one is going to be, one, but I think he would be great for Carolina. Adam Thielen's getting up there in age. Actually, Adam Thielen is up there in age. And outside of that, I can't really name you another receiver that is dependable. On top of that, DK Metcalf is better than Adam Thielen. When they had Adam Thielen, when they brought him in, I think it was quick that they found out, oh yeah, he's not at that level in his career anymore where he can be a number one receiver. This isn't Minnesota. So you give Bryce Young a legit number one receiver, and now you have a legit number two in Adam Thielen. You still have Chuba Hubbard. I think that's a great pairing. Now, I don't think that that's going to put them over the top. I don't think with DK they're now a Super Bowl contender. But I do think that Carolina would benefit both. Well, we did see towards the end of last year Bryce Young have a great end of the season. Like, he looked like the Bryce Young that went number one and should have went number one. If we get that Bryce Young moving forward with a DK, that changes the complexion of this Carolina Panthers team tremendously. So I don't know if it's going to happen. I doubt it's going to happen, but I think DK would be an incredible pickup for the Carolina Panthers. And the last team is the Broncos, Denver Broncos. Courtland Sutton is your guy. We get that. And you can debate if Courtland Sutton is still, well, let me say this. If Courtland Sutton is better than DK Metcalf, that can be a debate. I don't think it's that wide of a margin. But when you have a young quarterback, and if you see we can talk about some years they've been in the league as long as they've been, but Jordan Love is a young quarterback. Justin Herbert is a young quarterback. Caleb Williams is a young quarterback. Bryce Young is a young quarterback. When you have a young quarterback, the one thing that is important and vital, in my opinion, is you have a quality support system around them. That goes with coaches. That goes with the skills unit. You need somebody. You need stability and skill around them. And when you look, the Denver Broncos has a lot of skill. Whether we talk about, again, Sutton, whether we talk about Mims, Franklin, they have some good pieces. Obviously, you can debate Sutton and DK, but I don't think any of them are better than DK Metcalf. I think Sutton's close, but I just don't think he's better than DK Metcalf. You bring DK Metcalf to that Denver Broncos team, a Denver Broncos team that also has the Defensive Player of the Year, or reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Patrick Surtain. That might be, I think, the two best teams that could maybe bring them over the top and put them really into contention would be the Green Bay Packers and the Broncos. If you bring DK Metcalf, Green Bay has an incredible defense, even though we are going to see what happens with Zaire Alexander. Yeah, I think DK Metcalf is a clear number one receiver and can be and will be a number one receiver any team that he goes to. And I think that the Green Bay Packers, the Chargers, the Bears, the Panthers, and the Broncos would be perfect destinations for him. I can see a bunch of other places. I mean, when you have a wide receiver as good as him, he can work anywhere. The only difference is how much you would be paying him for his services. You don't want him to have to dim his services, which is really the conversation between number one and number two. You have to dim some of your light if you're a number two, but sometimes you don't have to dim it that much because you're not at that level to be dependable enough to be a number one, which is nothing wrong with that. But like Curtis Samuel, and I'm not throwing him under the bus or whatever, but Curtis, perfect example, actually. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think there's no question that Devontae Smith is good enough to be a number one receiver. I think if Devontae Smith was on 20-something different teams, he'd be the de facto number one receiver. If he was on the Chargers, Devontae Smith would be the number one receiver. The issue with, or the dynamic and issue that he has in Philly is A.J. Brown has been a little bit more dependable. He's a bigger wide receiver. He is more physical. On top of that, A.J. Brown would have to dim his light more than Devontae Smith would have to dim his light if A.J. Brown was to go from a number one to a number two receiver. Devontae Smith going from a 1 to 2, you don't have to dim it that much because he's accepted that role, and he's accepted the fact of, all right, well, A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. I don't know if DK is at that point of his career, which is why I have some of the teams that he had. Like, yes, it'd be crazy if he was paired alongside a CeeDee Lamb. If he was, we just talked about the Bengals. If he was on the Bengals with Jamar Chase, or if he was on the Vikings with Justin Jefferson, that'd be insane. But that's less likely to happen because I don't think DK is ready to take that back seat yet. That's all I'm saying. So the Green Bay Packers, the LA Chargers, the Chicago Bears, the Carolina Panthers, and the Denver Broncos, in my opinion, would be perfect for DK. There has been a lot of talk around the NBA as of recently. Obviously, I'm not going to get into the whole Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James thing. That ain't got nothing to do with me. That really has nothing to do with anybody but them two. Charles Barkley said some things to Kendrick Perkins. I never on air beef is always funny to me because it's like, what are you guys really gonna do? You know. But hey, shouts out to them. I wish nothing but the best for both Kendrick Perkins and Charles Barkley, seeing as though next year they will be co-workers. The conversation, we talked about it here. They've talked about it a bunch of places as of recently, but the face of the league conversation has ballooned to, I think, the bigger issue that the NBA has faced, and that is coverage of the league and how the coverage of the league has been off. And when I mean off, I mean, if you look, they really only focus on 1 to 2 teams. They really only focus on the Lakers. They'll focus on the Celtics. They'll focus on the Golden State Warriors because of Steph. Like, they don't really focus on a bunch of different teams. And, like, for instance, the other night, we saw some historic moments. Like, we saw Shai Gilgeous have a 40-plus game. We saw 2 Celtics players, Peyton Pritchard and Derek White, both be the first Celtics teammates to both have 40-point games. Steph Curry had a 56-point game. Giannis and Dame both had 30-point games. Like, there was a lot to cover that night. And the next day, they started with the Lakers, who didn't even play. Now, I will, which I don't like doing, but I will cut ESPN and these networks some slack. I understand. You see, what people forget and what people need to understand is, before anything, ESPN, Fox, TNT, they are networks. They are businesses. They're organizations. And they have teams of people that look at analytics, that look at statistics, and understand what topics get the most play, what topics get the most looks, what topics get the most viewers. And they've noticed that when you talk about LeBron James a lot, when you talk about the Lakers, when you talk about Golden State, when you talk about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, that is what gets the ratings. While, yes, some people may want to talk about, I don't know, let's say the Washington Wizards, like myself, I would be in heaven if all they talked about the Wizards and how the Wizards can improve and what the Wizards need to do and should Cooper Flag stay or go to the Wizards. Those would be great topics for me because I am from the Maryland, D.C. area. I am a Wizards fan. But that's not going to draw a mass population of ratings because nobody outside of Wizards fans and people in D.C., and a lot of people in D.C. don't even care about the Wizards. But outside of them, nobody cares about that. So I understand them constantly talking about LeBron James because he has been the face of the league. He has been the most clickable person and most digestible person to listen to. But that's where the bail cutting falls short or stops. Let's say that's where the bail cutting stops. I do think that it's sports media's responsibility to grow whatever they're talking about. I do think that they have to play a part in that. So yes, you can say, and the analytics can say that if you talk about the Lakers, if you talk about LeBron James, that's going to bring in the most ratings. Well, one reason for that is because people are programmed to listen to you talk about these players. So if you now inject more things, and more topics, more teams, you now introduce your viewers to other topics. And while the ratings won't be as great in the beginning, if you keep doing it, you keep talking about how great one team is or another team is, if you keep talking about teams that wouldn't usually get talked about on the docket, then the viewership is going to, and the audience is going to understand, okay, this is the new norm. So this is what we're going to expect, and this is that's how viewership of these teams, and that's how analytics of these teams, when we talk about viewing, goes up. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I wanted to talk about the top 12 teams, both in the East and in the West in the NBA. I just want to have a conversation. I'm probably going to talk about if they are really contenders, if not, who knows. I'm going to highlight some things. We're just going to have a conversation. So this is the point of the episode where if you don't give a gosh darn about a certain team on the top 6 of both the East and the West, just go to the description below, look at the timestamps, and you can go to your team or a team that you want to listen to. I'm giving you the opportunity to listen and us just talk about teams that you probably wouldn't listen to on a daily basis or to know on a daily basis, even though they have been great in the league, obviously, if they're the top 6 in both conferences. But if you're one of those people that just care about the Lakers, go to the timestamps, go where I talk about the Lakers, click on that, and YouTube or the DSPs would so eloquently put you where I'm talking about the Lakers. I want to start with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it's funny. I was talking to somebody yesterday that isn't a avid basketball fan, isn't an avid NBA fan, but knows a little bit about the NBA. And did you know that he didn't even know that the Cleveland Cavaliers, not the Celtics, not the Lakers, not the Denver Nuggets, the Cleveland Cavaliers arguably is the best team in basketball? Now, I will say this. I have been very skeptical over the last few years of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and more specifically Donovan Mitchell. I know how great Donovan Mitchell has been. I know that you can I don't know if you can consider him a superstar, but he's definitely a star in the league. He's definitely one of those players where if he's on your team is much better than it was with him being off it. I think one of the reasons that I was skeptical of calling him a superstar is because he has shown, as great as he is, he hasn't been the missing piece. He hasn't been the link to a championship caliber team. Even though he's been the best player, he hasn't been the link. He hasn't, like, his stardom, his skill hasn't propelled a team. They've been great in the regular season, but which is funny because they always talk about James Harden. You know, James Harden had incredible regular seasons. Hell, that's the issue that and that's how a lot of people are seeing Lamar Jackson right now. Has great regular seasons, but doesn't really perform to the way you would think he'd perform in the playoffs. This year feels different. Now, I'm not saying that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to make the NBA Finals, but what I will say is, as of what we've seen so far this year, yes, you can look at the record and say, of course you'll say that they're number one in the East, but no. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been the most consistent and the best team, at least in the East. Now, we're going to talk about the Celtics in a second, but this roster, and I think that so I do want to also give a shout out to Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson is an incredible coach. I think he might be the front runner for the coach of the year, even though I think it should go to somebody else who we'll talk to briefly or we'll talk to later or talk about, later. But this team is pretty much the same as last year's. And it's crazy when you talk about their defensive pressure. They're one of the best defensive teams. When you talk about the emergence and growth of Darius Garland, the growth of Donovan Mitchell, the growth of someone like Ty Jerome, Max Strus, this team is incredible. It doesn't get talked about a lot because obviously it's not that big of a market team with LeBron James not being there. But the Cleveland Cavaliers there's a reason why they have the best record in the East. There's a reason why when you talk about when you talk to a person that has watched these games, they know how good this team is. This team can beat you a myriad of ways. I think the linchpin, one of the biggest reasons why this team is as good as it is because of Evan Mobley and his growth. No, he's not the best player, but he's turning into that player that you draft him as high as you draft him for. And his defense, along with his offense, but his defense alongside of Jarrett Allen, that's kind of like a Twin Towers type situation, sort of like what Tim Duncan and David Robinson had. And Darius Garland. I'm still skeptical, which I'm going to call them contenders because it's a great freaking team. But I'm still a little skeptical because of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland being your 1 and 2. They're kind of small. And as there's only really been 2 smaller point guards that have been like the best player on their team that has won a championship, like ever. There have been smaller guards, yes, but I'm talking about the best players. The only ones that I can think of is Steph Curry and Isaiah Thomas for the Pistons. So Donovan Mitchell isn't let me see. Darius Garland is 6'1". Donovan Mitchell is 6'3". So but they are incredible players. So I think that I understand completely if, if we look up and the Celtics are not in the NBA Finals, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are. It makes perfect sense. They have been by far the best team and most consistent team in the NBA. We'll back up. Let me not say NBA. I'm just going to say the East. I'll say that. And I want to talk about the Boston Celtics for a second. I briefly touched on the other night Derek White and Peyton Pritchard both dropping 40 points. And one narrative that has been around the Celtics all season is they're bored. They're not playing their hardest because they're just bored. They're just sleepwalking through the regular season. And you're going to see an uptick in their play after the All-Star break, which we have. And I think, oh man, as much as it sucks, because I'm not a Celtics fan, but I'm going to be, I'm going to be objective. I don't think there's a team, at least in the East, because we'll just stick to the East. I don't think there's a team in the East that can beat the Celtics 4 out of 7 games. And what was clarification to me was Peyton Pritchard and Derek White dropping 40 points each. I understand that Jason Tatum didn't play. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember Drew Holiday playing. And if I'm not mistaken, I honestly don't remember Porzingis playing. He might have played, but I don't remember him playing. But Peyton Pritchard is their 5th, maybe 6th option. And Derek White is their 4th option. So when you have a team of they have undoubtedly the deepest roster in basketball. You can argue maybe the Thunder, but the Celtics have, Jason Tatum obviously is one of the best players in basketball. Jaylen Brown just won Finals MVP. Drew Holiday, 2-time champion, probably the linchpin and one of the biggest reasons why they won the championship. Kristaps Porzingis being 7'2", playing the way he's playing. Al Horford. Torrey Craig is a great pickup. And again, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard. Xavier Tillmans was important last year. There has to be a drop off somewhere in a 7-game series, and what I've seen, I don't know who can constantly contend with this team when they're firing on all cylinders, when they're all playing. We talk about I'm not going to put them on the same level as the Golden State Warriors, as in a sense of when they had Steph, Clay, Draymond, and KD. I'm not going to put them on that level offensively, but what I will say is this team is by far the greatest three-point shooting team I have ever seen in my life. This Celtics team, Peyton Pritchard and Derek White themselves, I think, combined for 11 to 12 threes. I think it might have been 14 threes. Actually, I think it was more than that. Because if I'm not mistaken, Peyton Pritchard alone had 12 threes. Like, it might have been 20-something threes for those two. And we're not including Jason Tatum. We're not including Jaylen Brown. We're not including Drew Holiday. We're not including Porzingis. I don't think that there's a team in the East that if they play their best, the Celtics and the other team, I don't think there's a team that can beat this team 4 out of 7 games. And Peyton Pritchard dropping 43 and Derek White dropping 41 was confirmation. Yes, I don't think that they are going to do that with Jason Tatum or Drew Holiday in the rotation because they weren't playing, but they're not going to need to. Because you already have Jason Tatum, who just dropped 30 the other night, and Drew Holiday. So, yeah. People say they were sleepwalking through, even with them sleepwalking, quote unquote, through the East and sleepwalking through the regular season, they're still second in the East. So, yeah. This Celtics team, man. Now, I will think the whole first apron, second apron thing is really going to come back to bite them strong, I think, next year. Because, remember, Jaylen Brown has a $300 million contract. Jason Tatum has a $300 million contract. You paid Drew Holiday. You paid Kristaps Porzingis. You paid Derek White. I think that whole apron thing is going to come in strong for them come next year in 2 years. But as of right now, yeah, this team is legit. Speaking of legit, I want to talk about the New York Knicks. I talked about this before, so I'm not really adding anything new. This team is good. This is a really good roster. When you put this roster on paper, it's great. With Jalen Brunson, with Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Precious Achiuwa, Mikal Bridges. This is a great roster. But the game's not played on paper, You have to be more than just a paper team. And night after night, this team has shown that they are more. This team has shown they can be a great team, that they are a great team. It's just when you pair them up and put them up against the top or the teams that you would see in the playoffs, that's when they falter. Until I see some consistency with this team as far as you playing the upper echelon teams and you not, bro, they're 0 whatever against the top tier teams. They haven't won a game. And while you can say, Jay, that's just the regular season, which is true, who you think you about to see? Like in the playoffs, you think you're just gonna get to see the Chicago Bulls all day? Like what? You think that you're gonna get to see a bunch of who's a team in the East that isn't the? You think you're gonna see a bunch of Charlotte Hornets? No. You're going to see the Celtics. You're going to see the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you can't contend with that, then you're not a championship caliber team. I'm not saying you have to beat them, but you can't continue to get rolled. They just lost to the Lakers the other night. The Lakers have emerged as one of the better teams, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We'll talk about shortly, actually. They've emerged as one of the better, they're the second team in the West. And while, yes, I understand that Jalen Brunson, he twisted his ankle. Karl Anthony Towns came back from, an absence. He had a personal thing going on. They still lost after being up big. So, on paper, this team is great. But one thing that I've said, one thing that people always say, you don't play the sport on paper. you have to show us more than just, oh, this is a good roster. Yeah, you're a good roster against the Hornets, against the Wizards, against the Bulls. But what happens when you go up against the top tier teams and they continue to lose? So I need to see. I love Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson is one of the best guards in the league. I love Karl-Anthony Towns. I think he's one of the best bigs in the league. You have to like prove it at this point. You can't keep banking on the past, and you can't keep banking on, oh, we're an on paper team, because what team on paper has been great but hasn't shown greatness against the top tier teams? What team do you know like that's won a championship? I don't know. The next team I want to talk about is the Milwaukee Bucks, because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this team a lot. This is a very interesting team. It's a very interesting team because you'd think a team that has Damian Lillard, a team that has Giannis, a team that now has Kyle Kuzma, a team that has Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, even though he's suspended, Taurean Prince. This is a good team, and they've played really well. I think they're fourth right now in the East. They've played really good. They got Trent. I completely forgot outside of the other day when I realized they got Gary Trent Jr. They also have Kevin Porter Jr. The reason why I am I'm not going to say out on this team, I'm a little cautious, is because one, Doc Rivers is your coach, and we know that he has a terrible record when we talk about the playoffs. Now, I will give him credit. He has been much better this year than he was last year when he came on halfway through the season, and he's been a little bit more consistent this year. But again, I think it has to see to believe when we talk about the playoffs. But this team is I get it. This team is very dependent on their stars, and I understand that. Obviously, if they're stars, you have one player that you can argue any given night is the best player in the world. You have Damian Lillard, who is an NBA 75 team member, one of the best guards we've ever seen, especially offensively. But this team is very reliant on, I didn't even turn the thing. This team is very reliant on Damian Lillard and Giannis's greatness. It feels like Kyle Kuzma, I know he's new, and we've seen we've seen how he is when he's on a team by himself, but this team, like most star teams, is going to go as far as their stars take them. And as we've seen, I don't know. I think this team is good enough, obviously, to beat the Knicks. Maybe because of size, I don't know if they can beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, because the way Evan Mobley and the way that Jared Allen plays is going to really stifle how Giannis approaches. So it's really going to have to be up to Damian Lillard and the three-point shooting of this team, which they do take a lot of threes. But I don't know. There's not much analysis when we talk about the Bucks. I don't know. I think that they're good enough to compete. If they are able to get past the Celtics or Cleveland, if they find themselves in the NBA Finals, I can see them winning it. But I just don't know if I see them in the NBA Finals, just because of how this team is constructed. And on top of that, the players, like you would expect more from a Kyle Kuzma. I think they're expecting more from a Kyle Kuzma, and he gives it, but not on an every night basis, which, Taurean Prince has been, every player that plays away from LeBron James seems to be better. Taurean Prince has been good, but I don't know. I think that's the best thing I can say, and that's no offense to the Bucks. I just don't know. I don't know. I know how great they can be. You have arguably the greatest player in basketball right now. But yeah, I don't know. A team that I kind of do know about and I have absolutely no faith in is the Indiana Pacers. I feel like we've seen, I will say I love the maturation of Benedict Mathurin. He has grown. I know he dealt with a lot of injury last year, but he's been much better this year than he has been. Like, he's grown. He's one of their better players. And we know that this team only goes as far as Tyrese Halliburton takes them. I will say that Tyrese Halliburton looks better this year than he did last year. I think he was dealing with injuries and he was playing through injuries because he was trying to get that supermax, and they know about the playing threshold that you have to have. But I don't know. This team isn't that good. When we talk about a team, they shoot a lot. Like TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard, rightfully so. They can shoot, but Pascal Siakam, they're an okay team. But I think that obviously their engine is Tyrese Halliburton, and even though yes, Miles Turner's good and everything, I don't know. This team to me isn't good enough to compete. When we talk about a 7-game series against the top tier teams, and I like the Pacers. I think the Pacers are I'm not gonna call them middle of the pack because I think they're fifth in the East. But when we talk about the grand scheme of the league and we talk about the top tier talent, I will consider them middle of the pack. Like, I don't have much faith in them to win a playoff series if it's going up against one of the quote unquote big dogs. I think they can win a game, maybe two, because Tyrese Halliburton's that good, and this team can get hot from three. This team can get hot, and they're a really fast. They're a fast break team. Like, they get most of their points in threes and fast breaks. But I don't know if when the game slows down, when the defense is honing in on you, I don't know how good they'll be. So, hold up. Did I just see? Hold up. Did I just see Tyrese Halliburton is making $42 million this year? Yeah. Damn. Good for him, man. Oh my God. And Pascal Siakam is making $42 million as well. Wow. Miles Turner's making 19. Well, pretty much 20. I remember damn. Yeah, that's going to be interesting how they spread that one out. But yeah, man, the Pacers, they have been good this year. I will say that they have been good this year, and I just don't know how they'll fare in a playoff series. Obviously, it's about matchups, but I don't even know what their matchup would be. Like, who is their perfect matchup? I don't know. A team that I'm actually excited and I think is a dark horse team. I talked about Kenny Atkinson, and I said that Kenny Atkinson, who is the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think that he's probably the front runner for Coach of the Year, but I don't think he should win Coach of the Year. My Coach of the Year would go to J.B. Bickerstaff. Do you remember just how bad the Detroit Pistons were last year? They were on a historically bad pace. Like, you know how bad the Wizards are this year? The Detroit Pistons were 10 times worse. And right now, I think they're in the 6th seed. And honestly, they're the dark horse. I think depending on who they match up with, they can beat a top-tier team. I can see them beating a New York Knicks. I can see them beating a Milwaukee Bucks. I can see them beating a team in the playoffs. A team that fairly has the same people from last year. They just changed coaches. And now they're playing. Now, yes, I understand that Cade Cunningham was injured a lot last year, but Cade Cunningham, this team is great. Cade, Malik Beasley, Jalen Duren, he needs to work on his defense, but Jalen Duren's pretty good. Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris is having a good year. Shocker. Like, Dennis Schroeder, he's getting passed around like Dennis Schroeder's been good. Isaiah still like this. Asar Thompson. I think the JB Bickerstaff, when you look at where they are now, I know they don't have the best record in the NBA. I know that. But when you look at where this team was just a year ago to where they are now, being one of the better teams in basketball, I get Kenny Atkinson has a better record, but I don't see how you don't give JB Bickerstaff Coach of the Year. And I don't think it's a fluke. Even if they don't, think about that. Even if they don't win a playoff series, the fact that this team is in the playoffs after being where they were a year ago, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people, depending on the matchup, there's going to be a lot of people that pick them to win a playoff series. This team is really good. Really good. And I am shocked of how good they were able and how quickly they were able to turn this around from just a year ago. Yeah. Cade Cunningham has emerged as one of the better point guards in the league. I know Kendrick Perkins put him as top 5. I don't know about top 5, but I know he's definitely a top 10 point guard this year. He's probably played himself into top 5. I don't know, but he's been really good. Malik Beasley is shooting the ball like he's prime Klay Thompson out there. Like, it's crazy. Tim Hardaway Jr. shooting the ball like it's nobody's like, yeah, man. I'm just shining light. We're just having conversations. I think that this is a really good team, and I think that this team has the possibility to make a lot of noise in the playoffs. And I think JB Bickerstaff should be the Coach of the Year. Let's go over to the West. And if there's any team, in my opinion, that has... Remember I said that the Boston Celtics were the deepest team in basketball? You can argue that the Oklahoma City Thunder is telling me to pump my brakes. Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, Shai Gilgeous, Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Joe, Carson Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, both Jalen Williams. Like, this team, boy. I understand if you say that Shai Gilgeous is the MVP. I may be on the same side as you, but this team has been so good, being number one in the West, I'm sorry, and being they destroy teams. They have played themselves into a realm of, it is for sure. You know how people say this is a championship or bust team or season, even though if you look at their roster, you know good and goddamn well they're not no championship caliber team. They're a good team, but not a playoff team, yes, not a championship caliber team. That cannot be said for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are a championship caliber team. It would be a championship or bust season for them. They have right now, depending on what poll you look, either the top or the second ranked player as far as MVP voting, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Chet Holmgren coming back has been a godsend for this team. I will say that the biggest issue with this team is sometimes they play down to competition, and they'll be in games where it's like, yo, why are you struggling right now? And they do blow. I'm not going to say ultimately lose, but they do blow a lot of leads. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Like, they'll be up 10, they'll be up 15, and then you come back and then they're up 1. I was like, what in God? Like, they do that a lot. Which is why I think that a lot of people talk about the youth when they talk about Oklahoma City, when they talk about Cleveland for a little bit. It's like they don't fear them. even though I don't know, young or not, Alex Caruso helps a lot. Lou Dort's been in the league a good number of years. This team can put up points. This team, they have Shai Gilgeous, who I think is in that Kevin Durant, Kyrie class when we talk about offensive weapons. In fact, right now he might be the best offensive weapon in basketball. I would maybe over KD because KD's getting a little older, even though KD is tough, and Kyrie obviously because of injury. But Shai Gilgeous is, bro. He scores effortlessly. That's just what happens. So I love this team. I think this team has the best shot in the West. As far I know, they're number one, so that's not like breaking news. But I think they have the best shot out of any team to win the championship and dethrone maybe a Cleveland or a Boston. And they have an argument as the deepest team in basketball. So that's Oklahoma City Thunder. Whoa. All of my people that's like, oh, here he goes talking about the Lakers. Yes, I will talk about them very briefly. I have to. They're second in the West, which is a testament to, I didn't think that, look, yes, the Lakers don't really have a quality big man. Yes, outside of arguably three players, they don't have really dependable players. Meaning outside of Luka Doncic, outside of LeBron James, and right now outside of Austin Reeves, they don't really have dependable players. Yes, Justin Vanderbilt's good, but he deals with injuries a lot. Jackson Hayes, no. Rui Hachimura, a little bit, yeah. Dalton Connect, he's a rookie. They don't really have dependable players. But they have, over the last few weeks, they have been arguably the best team in basketball. Since getting Luka, they've been like the best team in basketball. I think that they're motivated. It's kind of, we'll talk about Golden State in a minute, but it's kind of like when you get a new player and you just want to show him off, and he wants to also show the world why it was a mistake for someone to trade them. They just play motivated. No, they don't. They played better defense. They've even, surprisingly, LeBron's played great defense. Luka's played great defense. This team has played really good defense. Dorian Finney-Smith has been a freaking godsend to them too. I think this team is good, and I was on record saying that I don't think they're a championship caliber team. A lot of that is because they don't look like really any of the championship caliber teams that have come before them. If they do win a championship, it would be one of the first times they only have three reliable players, two of which aren't really defenders, and they don't have a big. Jackson Hayes is not a dependable big. This ain't Texas anymore. So I will admit that they have been great. They have been incredible. And I will admit that Luka Doncic and LeBron James pairing is as scary as we thought it would be. Them two are going crazy. Shout out to LeBron. I think I talked about last episode, but if I didn't, I'll say it again. Shouts out to LeBron for breaking 50K. The first player, when we talk about regular season and playoff points, first player in NBA history, the only player in NBA history to crack 50K. I mean, undoubtedly, he's so good. He made Stephen A. Smith change his mind about who's the greatest of all time. Like, LeBron James. And honestly, I will say this. When we talk about MVP, I don't know how you can't put or you don't put LeBron James in the MVP conversation. I understand the argument for Shea. I understand the argument for obviously Nikola Jokic. We'll talk about them in a second. I understand the argument for Giannis. I understand the argument for Jason Tatum. But LeBron James has been the best player on this Lakers team, and they're second in the West. Which, when you talk about record and you talk about competition-wise, is much better than the East. So, as shocking as it is, a 40-year-old player, in my opinion, should be at least in the conversation, the top 5, when we talk about MVP. That's how good LeBron James has been this year. And you're proving me, you're proving my takes to be hella off, because, I mean, this team, the way they've looked the last, I'll say 10 games, you can argue that they're the best team in basketball. And you look at me and say, how the hell are you saying they're not a championship caliber team? I'm just going on history, man. But they've been really good. So shouts out to them. The Denver Nuggets. They have arguably the best player in basketball. Actually, I kind of think it's not really that much of an argument right now. Nikola Jokic is the best player in basketball, like hands down. I'm not saying that necessarily means he should win MVP, because I don't know if he's the most well, actually, he probably is the most valuable, because this team, Jamal Murray, he's kind of having like an up and down year, as well as Aaron Gordon. Russell Westbrook has been pretty good, but he's also had those games where it's like, dog, what are you doing, Russ? Russell Westbrook's at that point of his career where, like, he's not going to change. He can't change. I mean, he's been, how long is, he's 36. Like, yeah. But I will say, at their best, this team is obviously a championship caliber team. At their best, this team, I mean, you have Nikola Jokic as the orchestrator. Michael Porter Jr. is pretty good still. Julian Strother out of Gonzaga has been really good. Christian Braun, he's excelled. I just don't know if the way that this team plays and the inconsistency from, mind you, there has been a game where Jamal Murray has scored over 50 points this year. There's also been a game where Jamal Murray has played over 30 minutes and only had 2 points. So it's just been a roller coaster, and he didn't get hurt either. It's just been a roller coaster ride this year with Jamal Murray. I think he's the key. If you get the Jamal Murray that helped you win a championship against the Heat, then I have all the faith in the world that this team can be a championship caliber team and is a championship caliber team. If you get the Jamal Murray that was getting outplayed by Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels last year in the playoffs, kind of got yourself a tough sledding once you get to the playoffs and see the caliber of team that you're playing. But you do have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, so that obviously is obviously. Why did I say it like that? That obviously is going to help. So we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, you know a team that I don't like? I know a lot of people are heaping praise on them. I don't like the Memphis Grizzlies. I do not like this team. I like Jaren Jackson Jr., I like Luke Kennard. I obviously like John Morant. But even John Morant hasn't had the best season this year. John Morant's kind of taken a step back. I don't know what it is. But you know what it is? What I think it is? The game is about improvement. The game is about growth, right? And I see John Morant taking a lot of threes, a lot of shots, because that's just where the game is. And that, I believe he's heard when they say, yo, you're not going to be able to just dunk on everyone, and your athleticism can't be your calling card. It can help, and it should help. It should enhance, but your athleticism is only going to take you so far. You have to develop a jump shot, and I think he's heard that. And I will admit that I think he's worked on that. I mean, when you look at a lot of off-season videos and even his approach to the game now, he looks like he's worked on it. The difference is he ain't really been hitting consistently, which is going to take time once you're working on something. But I don't know, man. Zach Edey, he's been really good. He might win Rookie of the Year, maybe. No, he might. I don't know. Brandon Clark has been pretty good. This team is okay. Obviously, you have Desmond Bain, but I just don't. When I'm looking at this roster, I don't see, outside of John Morant, who hasn't had the best. In fact, what is John Morant averaging right now? John Morant's averaging 21 points a game, which isn't crazy, but it's. I don't think that's on the caliber of player that he is. What is Jaren Jackson Jr. averaging right now? I know John Morant was injured. He's averaging 23. That is Jaren Jackson Jr. What's Desmond Bain averaging? That's what I want to know. Desmond Bain, he's averaging 19 points a game. So I just don't. What's Zach Edey? That's what I want to know. What's Zach Edey averaging? Zachary Edey, Canada's big man, 9 rebounds. He's only averaging 8 rebounds a game. Yeah, man. 7-4. Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm not really excited about this team. They're cool, but I don't know what cool is going to get you in the West. So another team that I'm kind of cooling off on is the Houston Rockets. They were on a tear. You remember when their offense was blistering. Their defense was really good. Shouts out to Ime Udoka. They were they were the most complete team you've ever seen coming out of the like Steven Adams was playing great. Dylan Brooks was playing like the menace that he is. You also had Alfred Şengün, who, if I'm not mistaken, was an all-star. Jalen Green, obviously Fred VanVleet, even though he's been hurt. Cam Whitmore has been really good. Amin Thompson has probably been the better Thompson out of the two. This team was incredible starting the gate. Like, it looked like Reed Shepherd was looking like he could be the Rookie of the Year. Like, this team was fire ring on all cylinders. Well, you know how they say a level always finds it. Well, a boat always finds its level. Well, the boat that is the Houston Rockets has found its level, and they're not that good. They're not that good. Like, yes, Jalen Green has been better, even though his defense is still non-existent. Alfred Şengün is probably their best player outside of Fred VanVleet. And Amin Thompson, he has been really good. I think, yeah, he has been extremely good. However, this team ain't that good. They don't play much defense. And I don't think it's because Ime Udoka is not a good. I mean, we know how he is defensively when we talk about the Celtics team that went to the championship that ultimately lost to Golden State. They were one of the best defensive teams in basketball. He's one of the best defensive coaches in basketball. I just think they're young. It's just an immature team. I mean, their average age. Listen to this. From the top, the oldest player on this roster is Jeff Green. So they have 3 30-year-olds. They have Jeff Green, 38, Fred VanVleet, 31, and Steven Adams, 31. Outside of that, they got 29, 29, 29, 28, 28, 26, 23, 23, 23, 22, 22, 21, 20, 20. This is a young team. This is, I think, one of the youngest teams. I think the youngest team is either the Rockets or the Thunder. But, yeah, I don't that youth is, nah. They're cool, but nah. And lastly, before we go, we got the GOAT to some people. They got the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry. Steph Curry is my favorite player right now. I've talked about this ad nauseum. We know who Steph Curry is. Steph Curry, in my opinion, I've talked about this, especially during the Team USA run this year. in Paris, I myself crowned Steph Curry the best point guard in NBA history. Now, a lot of people want to combat that and say, well, he doesn't even play like a point guard. I don't care. Steph Curry's a point guard. Now you have people saying that he should be in the GOAT debate. I agree that he's on the Mount Rushmore of influence. I think the Mount Rushmore of influence should be Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, and Steph Curry. And that's not taken away from LeBron or anything, but I think those are the four most influential players in basketball. But when we talk about the GOAT, like greatest of all time, as much of a Steph Curry fan as I am, he's not better than LeBron James. He's not better than Michael Jordan. You can argue if he's even better than Kobe Bryant. He's not better than Shaq. He's not better than... Well, that might be it. I don't know. All the Larry Bird fans come out of nowhere anytime I have anything discouraging to say about Larry Bird. But to bring it to present tense, the same way I kind of feel about the Lakers, in a sense, I feel about this Golden State Warriors team, in a sense of they're playing their best right now. Jimmy Butler coming to the team has been a revelation. It's just woken up a new fire in the team. It's woken up a fire in Steph Curry. I mean, he's played since Jimmy Butler's been there. He's played his best basketball of the season, which I told you guys that was going to happen when. Now you have another player that you have to worry about defensively. You just don't. You can't just face guard and double team Steph the whole time. Now you have to worry about Jimmy Butler, and now just so happens that Steph Curry is having his best offensive outings with Jimmy Butler on the team. This team is good, but I don't actually. This team is okay. I think Steph is great. I think Jimmy Butler's really good. I think Draymond Green's really good. Jonathan Kuminga, how they incorporate him when he comes back. But I don't think this is a championship caliber team. Like their big man is Kevon Looney. And I like Kevon Looney. He's a 3-time champion. The man's 6'9". The tallest player on this team is Quentin Post, who is a rookie. He's 7 feet tall. And he shoots more threes than anything. I like this Golden State team. It's fun to watch Steph Curry go off. I mean, we just saw him do a turnaround 3-pointer from half court. He just had 6 against a team. I love watching Steph. I love watching this team, but I don't think this is I still can't put this up. The only reason why people are saying that they could beat a Oklahoma City Thunder, they could beat those type of teams is because of youth. But I think that theory was debunked last year when they couldn't get out the play-in against the Kings. I don't know. I think this team can be really good. I think this team is really good. I just don't think it's championship caliber yet. Like, I like the emergence of Moses Moody. I like Gary Payton, what he brings. Pods has been much better with Jimmy Butler on the floor than he was without him. But when your big men, when your centers are 7 feet, 6'9", 6'6" in Draymond Green, and 6'9" in Kevon Looney, I don't know if I can call you a legit championship caliber team. This is a smart team, but I don't know if I can call you a championship caliber team. We'll see. You see, NBA, that's how easy it is just to talk about different teams. Yes, I talked about the Lakers. Yes, I talked about Golden State. Yes, I talked about LeBron. But when you incorporate more teams, even if nobody listens at this point, they have an opportunity to go check out a team. There you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. Actually, you know what? Hold off on getting anything from the Unpopular Podcast merch thing. Hold off on that, because I tried to get something for myself and the whole order messed up. So while yes, I would love you guys to support, don't get anything. Don't go to the Unpopular Podcast store, because again, I spent my money. I got something back in January. I don't mean to bash them, because I'm not going to say who it's from. You can go search. I went to buy something in January. It is March 7th, and I still ain't got it. So hold off on getting something from the Unpopular Podcast page. If you do want to support, and I hope that you would love to support, follow the YouTube, follow the DSPs. I post pretty much daily, whether you get reels, stories, you get clips. Please follow the YouTube. If you like what you're getting, follow the YouTube. I'm trying to grow as much as possible. If you like the content, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend to subscribe. It means a lot. Again, just like the YouTube, all the DSP listeners, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, please follow the DSPs. No platform is more important than the other. I appreciate everyone that wants to hear this luscious voice of mine. Please continue. If you like to the content and you know someone that would like the Unpopular Podcast and they're not subscribed, please tell them to subscribe. It means a lot. So that's all the DSPs and YouTube. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. Like I said, I post pretty much daily there, whether we talk about stories, whether we talk about reels, physical post. If you want to go back and forth, that's probably the quickest way to get to me. Just keep it respectful, and I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that, 1, you're listening to me. 2, you watched my clip. And 3, you're passionate about whatever you're talking about and have your takes, and I don't mind any of them. It means the world to me that you found my page or you found my video. It means a lot. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, please follow. It means a lot. Until next time, much love.